The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Valdoria Palace as Princess Catherine adjusted the delicate sapphire necklace around her throat. She had no idea that this ordinary Tuesday would become the day that would shake the very foundations of the royal court and set in motion events that would change her life forever. King Edmund sat in his private study, surrounded by ancient leather-bound books and portraits of his ancestors. His weathered hands held a document that had arrived by special courier just hours earlier. The contents were so significant that he had dismissed even his most trusted advisors, choosing to process this momentous news alone. The letter bore the seal of the International Council of Noble Houses, an organization that rarely involved itself in the affairs of individual kingdoms unless something truly extraordinary was at stake. Queen Consort Camilla was in her personal salon, discussing the week's social calendar with her lady-in-waiting, Lady Margaret. The upcoming charity gala for the Children's Hospital was her pet project, and she had spent months ensuring every detail would reflect perfectly on her reign as Queen Consort. She had carefully planned her entrance, her speech, and even the specific shade of emerald green for her gown. Everything was designed to cement her position as the beloved Queen of Valdoria. The kingdom itself buzzed with its usual morning energy. Market vendors called out their wares in the cobblestone squares below the palace, while nobles in their carriages made their way through the winding streets toward the palace for various appointments and social calls. None of them could have imagined that by evening, their quiet kingdom would be the center of international attention. Princess Catherine had always been known for her dedication to charitable causes, but recent months had seen her involvement reach unprecedented levels. She had personally visited drought-stricken villages in the eastern provinces, bringing not just royal attention but also practical solutions. Her collaboration with agricultural experts had resulted in new irrigation systems that were already showing promising results. The international community had taken notice, though Catherine herself remained focused on the work rather than any recognition. In the palace corridors, servants whispered among themselves about unusual activity in the king's study. Typically, King Edmund maintained an open-door policy for his family, but today, even Princess Catherine and Queen Consort Camilla had been politely turned away. The king's personal secretary, Mr. Harrison, stood guard outside the study with instructions to admit no one until further notice. Lady Margaret noticed Queen Consort Camilla's growing irritation as the morning progressed. The Queen Consort prided herself on being informed about all palace affairs, particularly those that might affect her own position or upcoming events. The secrecy surrounding the king's activities was highly unusual and deeply concerning to her. She had built her influence in the court through careful attention to information and timing, and this unexpected development threatened her carefully maintained control. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine continued her morning routine, unaware of the storm brewing around her. She reviewed reports from her recent humanitarian missions, responded to letters from citizens seeking royal assistance, and prepared for a scheduled visit to a local orphanage. Her genuine commitment to these causes had earned her respect far beyond the kingdom's borders, though she remained characteristically modest about her achievements. The afternoon brought an unexpected summons. All senior members of the royal family were requested to gather in the throne room at precisely 4 o'clock. The formal nature of the summons was unusual, typically reserved for state occasions or announcements of the highest importance. Queen Consort. Camilla felt her anxiety spike as she wondered what could possibly require such formality on an otherwise ordinary day. As the appointed hour approached, tension filled the ornate throne room. The afternoon light streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the assembled nobles and court officials who had been hastily summoned to witness whatever announcement the king deemed necessary. Princess Catherine entered wearing a simple blue dress that complemented her natural grace, while Queen Consort Camilla arrived in a more elaborate golden gown that seemed designed to assert her royal status. King Edmund entered with unusual solemnity, carrying himself with the bearing of a monarch about to make history. In his hand, he held the same document that had occupied his attention all morning, along with an ornate wooden box that none of the assembled witnesses had seen before. The murmur of conversation died immediately as he took his position on the throne. The king's voice carried clearly through the vast room as he began to speak. He explained that the International Council of Noble Houses had been conducting a comprehensive review of humanitarian efforts by royal houses across all kingdoms. This review, spanning several years, had evaluated not just the scope of charitable work, but also its effectiveness, innovation, and genuine impact on people's lives. Princess Catherine felt her heart rate increase as she began to understand the direction of the king's words. She had never sought recognition for her humanitarian work, viewing it simply as her duty and privilege as a member of the royal family. The idea that her efforts had been under international scrutiny was both humbling and slightly overwhelming. Queen Consort Camilla's expression grew increasingly strained as the king continued his explanation. Her own charitable work, while well publicized and socially prominent, had focused more on high-profile events and traditional royal patronages. She began to sense that whatever recognition was coming, it might not be directed toward her. The moment that would change everything came when King Edmund lifted the ornate box and announced that Princess Catherine had been selected to receive the prestigious Order of International Humanitarian Excellence. This honor, he explained, was awarded only once every decade to a royal family member who had demonstrated extraordinary dedication to improving the lives of people both within and beyond their own kingdom's borders. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Courtiers exchanged glances of amazement and excitement, while international diplomats who had been quietly observing the ceremony immediately began calculating the implications for their own kingdom's relationships with Valdoria. This was not merely a local honor, but an international recognition that would elevate both Princess Catherine and the kingdom itself to new levels of global respect. Princess Catherine stood frozen for several moments, genuinely stunned by the announcement. She had always believed that the reward for humanitarian work was the work itself, the improved lives, the solved problems, the hope brought to difficult situations. The idea that her efforts would receive such prestigious recognition had never occurred to her, and the magnitude of the honor was almost overwhelming. Queen Consort Camilla's reaction was more complex. Outwardly, she maintained her composed royal bearing and even managed to smile and applaud at the appropriate moments. Inwardly, however, she was struggling with a storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her carefully maintained facade. Years of positioning herself as the primary charitable face of the royal family seemed to crumble in an instant. The ceremony continued as King Edmund opened the ornate box to reveal an extraordinary medallion crafted from platinum and adorned with diamonds arranged in a pattern representing the globe. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and the weight of its symbolism was even more significant than its obvious monetary value. This medallion would mark Princess Catherine as one of the most respected humanitarian figures in the international royal community. As the king placed the medallion around Princess Catherine's neck, the assembled crowd erupted in applause that seemed to echo endlessly through the throne room. The sound was not merely polite ceremony, but genuine appreciation for work that had touched countless lives. Even the usually reserved diplomatic corps seemed genuinely moved by the recognition of Princess Catherine's achievements. The formal ceremony concluded with traditional presentations and speeches, but the real drama was just beginning. As the crowd began to disperse, the subtle dynamics of court life immediately shifted. Nobles who had previously balanced their attention between both royal women now seemed drawn more strongly to Princess Catherine. The power of international recognition had altered the social landscape of the palace in ways that would take days to fully understand. Princess Catherine found herself surrounded by well-wishers and dignitaries eager to express their congratulations and discuss her future humanitarian plans. Her natural grace and genuine humility in receiving these compliments only served to enhance the positive impression she had already made. Each conversation seemed to generate new opportunities for expanding her charitable work on an international scale. Queen Consort Camilla, meanwhile, found her own circle of supporters oddly diminished. While people were still respectful and properly deferential to her position as Queen Consort, the energy and excitement that had previously surrounded her own charitable initiatives seemed to have shifted elsewhere. The change was subtle but unmistakable to someone as attuned to court dynamics as she was. The evening brought private family time, but the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tensions. King Edmund was clearly proud of his daughter-in-law's achievement and spoke enthusiastically about the positive impact this recognition would have on Valdoria's international standing. His joy was uncomplicated and genuine, reflecting a father's pride in seeing merit properly recognized and rewarded. Princess Catherine struggled to fully process the day's events. The humanitarian work that had driven her for years would now continue under intense international scrutiny. While this attention might help amplify the causes she cared about, it also brought new responsibilities and expectations that she was still trying to understand. The private person who simply wanted to help people was now a public symbol of humanitarian excellence. Queen Consort Camilla retired to her chambers earlier than usual, claiming a mild headache. In the privacy of her own rooms, she finally allowed herself to fully experience the emotions she had been suppressing all day. The careful plans she had made for establishing her own legacy as a beloved queen seemed suddenly inadequate compared to the international recognition that Princess Catherine had achieved. As night fell over Valdoria Palace, three very different people lay awake, contemplating how this single day had changed their lives forever. The king felt satisfaction in seeing true merit recognized. Princess Catherine felt the weight of new responsibilities settling on her shoulders, and Queen Consort Camilla stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with plans for how to navigate this dramatically altered landscape. The kingdom slept peacefully, unaware that the morning newspapers would carry headlines about their princess that would be read around the world. International news services were already preparing stories about the unprecedented honor, and diplomatic channels were buzzing with communications about what this recognition might mean for future international relationships. In her private study, Princess Catherine sat reviewing the letter that had accompanied her award. The detailed description of her humanitarian achievements, written by international observers, revealed the scope of attention her work had received. Projects she had considered purely local efforts had apparently been noticed and evaluated by experts from multiple kingdoms, creating a comprehensive picture of impact she had never fully realized. The letter also outlined new opportunities that would come with the honor: invitations to speak at international humanitarian conferences, chances to collaborate with charitable organizations across multiple kingdoms, and access to resources that could dramatically expand the reach of her efforts. The possibilities were exciting, but also somewhat daunting for someone who had always preferred working directly with people rather than navigating large organizations. Meanwhile, in her own chambers, Queen Consort Camilla was conducting her own review of the situation. Lady Margaret sat nearby, having been summoned for what would prove to be a very long conversation about strategy and positioning. The Queen Consort's analytical mind was already working through various scenarios for how to maintain her own relevance and influence in this new reality. The palace staff, always sensitive to the moods and dynamics of the royal family, had noticed the subtle shift in atmosphere. Conversations in the servants' quarters focused on what the day's events might mean for their own daily routines and responsibilities. Some speculated that Princess Catherine's increased international profile might mean more state visits and official events, while others wondered if Queen Consort Camilla might respond by intensifying her own charitable activities. As the first day of this new era drew to a close, none of them could have predicted the dramatic events that would unfold in the days to come. The international recognition that had seemed like a simple honor would prove to be the catalyst for changes that would test the very foundations of royal family harmony and force each member to confront their deepest motivations and fears. The stage was set for a royal drama that would captivate not just the Kingdom of Valdoria, but the entire international community that watched royal affairs with fascination and keen interest in the human dynamics that played out on the world's most visible stage. Dawn broke over Valdoria Palace with an unusual energy that seemed to permeate every corner of the ancient building. The international news coverage of Princess Catherine's unprecedented honor had begun broadcasting across the globe, and the palace switchboard was already overwhelmed with calls from journalists, diplomats, and well-wishers from dozens of kingdoms. What had started as a private family moment had become a major international story overnight. Princess Catherine woke to find Lady Sarah, her personal assistant, standing beside her bed with a concerned expression and an armload of newspapers from various countries. The headlines were more dramatic than anything Catherine could have imagined. Valdoria Princess sets new standard for royal humanitarian work, read one international publication, while another proclaimed, "The People's Princess, Catherine's revolutionary approach to royal duty." The magnitude of global attention was both thrilling and terrifying. Queen Consort Camilla had awakened much earlier, having spent most of the night in restless contemplation. By the time the sun rose, she had already reviewed every major news outlet's coverage of the previous day's events. Each article seemed to emphasize Princess Catherine's innovative approaches to humanitarian work, while barely mentioning the Queen Consort's own considerable charitable contributions. The oversight felt deliberate and deeply personal. King Edmund was in his element, fielding congratulatory calls from fellow monarchs and heads of state who praised both Princess Catherine's achievements and his wisdom in supporting such groundbreaking humanitarian efforts. The international community's response was overwhelmingly positive, with several kingdoms expressing interest in collaborating on future charitable initiatives. For a relatively small kingdom like Valdoria, this level of international attention represented unprecedented opportunities for diplomatic and economic advancement. The palace staff struggled to maintain normal operations under the intense media scrutiny. Photographers with telephoto lenses had positioned themselves at every possible vantage point around the palace grounds, hoping to capture candid moments of the newly famous princess. Security protocols had been hastily upgraded to manage the increased attention while still allowing the royal family to conduct their necessary duties. Princess Catherine's scheduled visit to the orphanage had to be completely reimagined. What was originally planned as a quiet personal interaction with the children had become a major media event. Representatives from multiple international children's charities had requested permission to attend, and several foreign dignitaries had expressed interest in accompanying the princess to observe her methods firsthand. The morning meeting between Princess Catherine and her expanded staff team revealed the scope of changes her new status would require. International speaking engagements were being proposed for the coming months. Collaborative projects with humanitarian organizations from other kingdoms were being outlined, and a comprehensive media strategy was being developed to manage the intense global interest in her work. Queen Consort Camilla, meanwhile, was conducting her own strategy session with Lady Margaret and a hastily assembled team of advisors. The challenge was significant: how to maintain her own prominence and influence while gracefully acknowledging Princess Catherine's achievement. The delicate balance required careful planning to avoid appearing jealous or petty, while still protecting her own position within the royal hierarchy. The first public appearance of both women together came during the traditional morning walkabout in the palace gardens, a routine that had suddenly become a globally watched event. International news crews had been granted limited access to film the royal family's response to the previous day's announcement. The world was watching to see how the family dynamic would play out under this new spotlight. Princess Catherine approached the event with her characteristic grace and sincerity, speaking warmly with garden staff and visitors while wearing the prestigious medallion for the first time in public. Her natural ease with people was evident as she discussed her humanitarian work with genuine passion, describing specific projects and their impacts on local communities. Each interaction demonstrated the qualities that had earned her international recognition. Queen Consort Camilla's approach was more calculated. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a sophisticated burgundy ensemble that photographed beautifully and conveyed both authority and warmth. Her conversations with visitors touched on her own charitable initiatives, subtly reminding everyone present of her own significant contributions to the kingdom's humanitarian efforts. The performance was flawless, but careful observers could detect an underlying tension in her demeanor. The contrast between the two women became more apparent as the morning progressed. Princess Catherine's interactions appeared effortless and genuine, while Queen Consort Camilla's seemed more rehearsed and strategic. International commentators would later analyze every gesture and expression, creating narratives about royal family dynamics that went far beyond what either woman had intended to communicate. A particularly telling moment occurred when a young girl from a visiting school group approached Princess Catherine with a handmade card congratulating her on the award. The princess knelt down to the child's level, accepted the card with obvious delight, and spent several minutes discussing the girl's own drawings and interests. The interaction was captured by dozens of cameras and would become one of the most widely circulated images of the day. Queen Consort Camilla observed this exchange from a few feet away, maintaining her composed smile while internally calculating the impact of such spontaneous, heartfelt moments on public perception. She recognized that genuine emotional connections could not be manufactured or strategized, and this realization was both frustrating and concerning for someone who had built her public image through careful planning and execution. The afternoon brought the first major test of the new dynamic when both women were scheduled to attend a joint meeting with representatives from the International Red Cross, who had specifically requested to discuss potential collaborations following Princess Catherine's recognition. Queen Consort Camilla had originally been intended as the primary royal representative for such meetings, but circumstances had clearly shifted. The meeting itself was diplomatically complex. The Red Cross representatives were obviously eager to work with Princess Catherine, given her new international profile, but they also needed to maintain proper protocol regarding Queen Consort Camilla's higher formal rank within the royal family. The balance required careful navigation to avoid creating any diplomatic incidents while maximizing the potential for meaningful humanitarian collaboration. Princess Catherine handled the situation with remarkable skill, consistently deferring to Queen Consort Camilla's formal authority while clearly demonstrating the innovative thinking and practical expertise that had earned her international recognition. She presented detailed plans for refugee assistance programs and disaster relief coordination that impressed the international representatives while carefully including Queen Consort Camilla in all discussions about implementation. Queen Consort Camilla's response was masterful in its own way. She gracefully accepted Princess Catherine's deference while making substantive contributions to the strategic planning discussions. Her years of experience in diplomatic protocol proved valuable in structuring potential agreements that would satisfy all parties involved. However, the underlying tension of having to share center stage in an area she had previously dominated was evident to those who knew her well. The meeting concluded with preliminary agreements for several major international humanitarian initiatives that would position Valdoria as a leading kingdom in global charitable efforts. Both women had contributed significantly to this success, but the driving force behind the international interest was clearly Princess Catherine's recent recognition. This reality would shape all future interactions between them. Evening brought a private dinner that would prove to be a turning point in the relationship between the two women. King Edmund had arranged for an intimate family gathering to discuss the day's events and plan for the challenges ahead. The setting was designed to be comfortable and informal, but the underlying tensions made relaxation impossible for anyone involved. The conversation began diplomatically enough, with King Edmund expressing pride in both women's contributions to the day's successes. He emphasized the importance of family unity during periods of intense public scrutiny and outlined his vision for how Valdoria could leverage this international attention to advance humanitarian causes on a global scale. Princess Catherine spoke humbly about her surprise at the international response and her hope that the attention would ultimately benefit the causes she cared about rather than focusing on her personally. She expressed genuine concern about managing the new responsibilities while maintaining the hands-on approach to humanitarian work that had made her effective in the first place. Queen Consort Camilla's contributions to the conversation were more complex. She congratulated Princess Catherine warmly and spoke about the pride she felt in seeing the kingdom receive such positive international attention. However, subtle undertones in her comments revealed her concerns about how this new dynamic would affect her own role and influence within the royal family structure. The pivotal moment came when King Edmund announced his decision to create a new position within the royal household, International Humanitarian Coordinator. This role would formalize Princess Catherine's expanded responsibilities and provide the resources necessary to manage her growing international commitments. The announcement was presented as a natural evolution of her existing work, but everyone present understood its broader implications. Princess Catherine's immediate response was to express concern about the additional bureaucracy potentially interfering with her direct charitable work. She worried that formal titles and expanded staff might create barriers between her and the people she was trying to help. Her resistance to the trappings of increased status only served to enhance her reputation for genuine humility and dedication. Queen Consort Camilla's reaction was more measured. She recognized the political necessity of the decision while privately calculating what it would mean for her own position. The creation of this new role would inevitably shift some resources and attention away from her existing charitable initiatives, requiring careful strategic adjustments to maintain her own relevance and influence. The dinner conversation continued late into the evening, covering practical details about security arrangements, media management, and international protocol. Each topic required delicate negotiation to balance Princess Catherine's new international obligations with Queen Consort Camilla's existing responsibilities and prerogatives. The complexity of these discussions revealed how significantly the royal family's dynamics had been altered by a single day's events. As the evening concluded, both women retreated to their private quarters to process the day's developments in solitude. Princess Catherine found herself overwhelmed by the rapid pace of change and the weight of new expectations. The humanitarian work that had always been deeply personal was becoming increasingly public and political, requiring adjustments she was still struggling to understand. Queen Consort Camilla's evening reflection was more strategic. She reviewed the day's events systematically, identifying opportunities and challenges in the new landscape. Her years of experience in royal protocol and palace politics provided her with tools for navigating this situation, but the emotional adjustment was proving more difficult than the practical considerations. The night brought restless sleep for both women as they contemplated the challenges ahead. International expectations were now focused on their ability to work together harmoniously while advancing humanitarian causes on a global scale. The success or failure of this collaboration would affect not only their personal relationship, but also Valdoria's standing in the international community. Meanwhile, the global media was already speculating about potential tensions within the royal family. Royal correspondents from multiple kingdoms were analyzing every interaction between the two women, searching for signs of conflict or competition. The intense scrutiny would make every future public appearance a carefully watched performance with implications far beyond the immediate moment. The palace staff worked through the night to prepare for what promised to be an even more challenging day ahead. International delegations were requesting meetings, media organizations were seeking exclusive interviews, and charitable organizations from around the world were proposing collaborative projects. The small kingdom of Valdoria was suddenly at the center of global humanitarian attention. As dawn approached, both Princess Catherine and Queen Consort Camilla lay awake contemplating the same fundamental question: how to navigate their changed relationship while serving the greater good of the kingdom and the humanitarian causes they both genuinely cared about. The answer would emerge through the trials and tribulations of the days to come, testing their character and resolve in ways neither had anticipated. The stage was set for the final act of this royal drama, where personal ambitions and genuine humanitarian dedication would collide in ways that would determine not only the future of two remarkable women, but also the international reputation of the Kingdom of Valdoria itself. The third day after Princess Catherine's historic award began with an emergency that would test every assumption about royal protocol, personal ambition, and genuine humanitarian commitment. A devastating earthquake had struck the neighboring kingdom of Astoria during the early morning hours, and by dawn, reports were flooding in about massive casualties and urgent needs for international assistance. King Edmund was awakened at 5 in the morning by urgent communications from both the Astorian royal family and international relief organizations. The scale of the disaster was unprecedented for the region, with entire villages buried under rubble and thousands of people left homeless in the mountainous terrain. The international community was mobilizing rapidly, but Valdoria's geographical proximity and recent humanitarian recognition made their response particularly crucial. Princess Catherine learned of the disaster when Lady Sarah burst into her chambers with tears streaming down her face. The reports were heartbreaking. Children trapped in collapsed schools, hospitals overwhelmed with casualties, and rescue teams struggling to reach remote areas. For Princess Catherine, this was not a political opportunity or a chance to demonstrate her newly recognized expertise, but a human catastrophe requiring immediate action. Queen Consort Camilla received the news through more formal channels, as palace protocol dictated that she be briefed on all major international developments that might affect Valdoria's diplomatic relationships. Her immediate response was to summon her senior staff to coordinate the kingdom's official humanitarian response. Years of experience had taught her the importance of swift, well-organized action in crisis situations. Within 2 hours, both women were in the palace situation room, surrounded by maps, communication equipment, and representatives from various government departments. The scene was unprecedented. Never before had both senior royal women been directly involved in coordinating an international emergency response. Their different approaches to the crisis would reveal fundamental differences in their characters and priorities. Princess Catherine's focus was intensely practical and immediate. She had already contacted her network of humanitarian organizations to assess available resources and transportation capabilities. Her experience in disaster relief had taught her that the first 72 hours were crucial, and bureaucratic delays could mean the difference between life and death for trapped survivors. Queen Consort Camilla approached the situation with equal urgency but greater attention to diplomatic protocol and international relationships. She understood that Valdoria's response would be scrutinized by allies and competitors alike, and that the kingdom's actions could have lasting implications for future diplomatic relationships. Her contributions focused on ensuring that their aid efforts complemented, rather than complicated, the larger international response. The first major decision point came when both women simultaneously proposed leading relief missions to Astoria. Princess Catherine wanted to travel immediately with medical supplies and rescue equipment, drawing on her experience with hands-on disaster response. Queen Consort Camilla suggested a more formal state visit that would bring both immediate aid and high-level diplomatic support to the Astorian royal family. King Edmund found himself in the impossible position of choosing between two equally valid but potentially conflicting approaches. His decision would inevitably be interpreted as favoring one woman over the other, with implications that could affect both their personal relationship and Valdoria's international reputation. The weight of this choice was immense, and the time pressure made careful deliberation impossible. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Prince Alexander, the heir to the throne and Princess Catherine's husband, who had been quietly observing the developing tension between his wife and stepmother. His suggestion was elegant in its simplicity. Both women should go to Astoria, but with clearly defined and complementary roles that would maximize the effectiveness of Valdoria's response. Princess Catherine would lead the immediate humanitarian response, working directly with rescue teams and relief organizations to provide hands-on assistance where it was most needed. Her newly recognized expertise and practical experience made her the obvious choice for this role, and her willingness to work in dangerous conditions would demonstrate Valdoria's genuine commitment to helping their neighbors. Queen Consort Camilla would head the diplomatic mission, working with the Astorian government and international partners to coordinate long-term reconstruction efforts and ensure that immediate relief work aligned with broader strategic planning. Her experience in international protocol and her formal position as Queen Consort made her uniquely qualified for this crucial but less visible role. The decision satisfied both women's desire to contribute meaningfully while avoiding direct competition. More importantly, it recognized that effective disaster response required both immediate action and careful coordination, demanding different but equally valuable skill sets. The arrangement would test their ability to work together under extreme pressure while the entire world watched their every move. Preparation for the joint mission revealed the depth of organizational challenges involved in coordinating such a complex response. Princess Catherine's team focused on medical supplies, rescue equipment, and emergency shelter materials that could be deployed immediately upon arrival. Her approach emphasized mobility and flexibility, allowing rapid response to changing conditions on the ground. Queen Consort. Camilla's preparation involved extensive consultation with foreign ministry officials, international aid organizations, and Astorian government representatives. Her mission required careful advance planning to ensure that diplomatic protocols were observed while still maintaining the urgency appropriate to a humanitarian crisis. The balance between formal procedures and emergency response demanded exceptional skill. The departure from Valdoria Palace was a carefully choreographed event that demonstrated the unity and effectiveness of the royal family's response to the crisis. Both women addressed the gathered media with statements that emphasized Valdoria's commitment to international humanitarian assistance and the complementary nature of their respective missions. Princess Catherine's remarks were characteristically direct and emotional. She spoke about the human cost of the disaster and Valdoria's responsibility to help their neighbors in crisis. Her obvious personal investment in the relief effort resonated strongly with international audiences who had come to appreciate her genuine approach to humanitarian work. Queen Consort. Camilla's statement was more formal, but equally compelling. She emphasized Valdoria's historical friendship with Astoria and the kingdom's commitment to supporting both immediate relief efforts and long-term reconstruction. Her diplomatic language conveyed the official government position while maintaining the warmth appropriate to a humanitarian mission. The flight to Astoria provided both women with their first opportunity for extended private conversation since the award ceremony. Initially tense and formal, their discussion gradually evolved into a more honest exchange about their respective roles, motivations, and concerns. The shared focus on helping disaster victims created common ground that had been missing from their previous interactions. Princess Catherine acknowledged the political complexities that Queen Consort Camilla had to navigate, recognizing that effective humanitarian work often required diplomatic skills she had previously undervalued. Queen Consort Camilla, in turn, expressed admiration for Princess Catherine's hands-on approach and her willingness to take personal risks in service of humanitarian causes. Their arrival in Astoria was met with scenes of devastation that put their personal tensions into stark perspective. Entire neighborhoods had been reduced to rubble, rescue teams were working frantically to locate survivors, and thousands of displaced families were living in temporary shelters with minimal resources. The scale of human suffering made royal protocol and personal ambitions seem insignificant. Princess Catherine immediately immersed herself in rescue operations, working alongside international teams to locate trapped survivors and distribute emergency supplies. Her willingness to climb through dangerous rubble and comfort traumatized children was captured by news cameras and transmitted around the world, creating powerful images that would define international perceptions of Valdoria's humanitarian commitment. Queen Consort Camilla's work was less photogenic, but equally crucial. She spent long hours in meetings with government officials, aid coordinators, and international representatives, working to ensure that immediate relief efforts were sustainable and that reconstruction planning began immediately. Her diplomatic skills proved essential in navigating complex international relationships during a crisis. The defining moment of their mission came during the rescue of a family trapped in a collapsed apartment building. Princess Catherine had been working with rescue teams for hours when they finally located signs of life deep within the rubble. The extraction would be dangerous and time-sensitive, requiring careful coordination between multiple teams. Queen Consort Camilla was in a nearby government coordination center when she learned about the rescue operation. Despite the risks to her own safety and the potential diplomatic complications if something went wrong, she immediately traveled to the rescue site to provide whatever support she could. Her decision to personally involve herself in the dangerous operation demonstrated a level of commitment that surprised many observers. Working together for the first time in a genuinely life-or-death situation, both women contributed to the successful rescue of an elderly couple and their young granddaughter. Princess Catherine's experience with emergency procedures proved crucial in the physical aspects of the rescue, while Queen Consort Camilla's organizational skills helped coordinate the complex logistics required to safely extract the victims. The successful rescue became a symbol of both Valdoria's humanitarian commitment and the effectiveness of cooperation between the two royal women. International media coverage emphasized how their different skills had complemented each other perfectly, creating a result that neither could have achieved alone. The images of both women comforting the rescued family would become iconic representations of compassionate leadership. The remainder of their mission in Astoria continued to demonstrate their evolved working relationship. They maintained their distinct roles and approaches while actively supporting each other's efforts and sharing information that improved the overall effectiveness of Valdoria's response. The competitive tension that had marked their earlier interactions was replaced by genuine collaboration focused on serving people in desperate need. Their return to Valdoria was met with unprecedented public celebration. Citizens who had watched the disaster response unfold through international media coverage expressed pride in their royal family's commitment and effectiveness. The successful mission had not only helped disaster victims, but also elevated Valdoria's international reputation to new heights. King Edmund's welcome remarks emphasized the personal growth and professional development that both women had demonstrated during the crisis. His pride in their achievements was obvious, but more importantly, he recognized that their collaboration had created something greater than the sum of their individual contributions. The kingdom had found its voice in international humanitarian affairs. Princess Catherine's post-mission reflection focused on the lessons learned about the importance of diplomatic coordination in humanitarian work. Her respect for Queen Consort Camilla's skills had grown significantly, and she began to understand how political considerations could actually enhance rather than hinder effective relief efforts. The experience had broadened her perspective on leadership and cooperation. Queen Consort. Camilla's assessment was equally thoughtful. She had gained deep appreciation for the physical courage and emotional commitment required for hands-on humanitarian work. Her admiration for Princess Catherine's dedication was genuine, and she began to see how her own diplomatic skills could support rather than compete with such grassroots efforts. The weeks following the Astoria mission brought new opportunities for collaboration that built on their successful partnership. International organizations began specifically requesting joint involvement from both women, recognizing that their combined expertise created uniquely effective humanitarian responses. Their different strengths had become complementary rather than competitive. The relationship between Princess Catherine and Queen Consort Camilla had fundamentally transformed. What began as a rivalry for recognition and influence had evolved into a genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared commitment to humanitarian causes. Their different approaches, rather than creating conflict, now provided comprehensive coverage of the complex challenges involved in international relief work. The Kingdom of Valdoria had emerged from the crisis with enhanced international standing and a clear identity as a leader in humanitarian affairs. The royal family's unity and effectiveness had impressed allies and potential partners alike, creating opportunities for diplomatic and economic advancement that would benefit all citizens. As the immediate crisis passed and normal palace routines resumed, both women found themselves changed by their experiences. Princess Catherine had gained appreciation for the political complexities of international humanitarian work, while Queen Consort Camilla had discovered the personal satisfaction that came from direct service to people in crisis. Their weekly planning meetings, once sources of tension and careful protocol, had become collaborative sessions where they actively sought ways to combine their efforts for maximum impact. The competition for resources and recognition had been replaced by strategic coordination aimed at expanding their combined effectiveness. The international recognition that had initially created conflict between them now served as a foundation for even greater achievements. Princess Catherine's award had opened doors, but it was their partnership that walked through them successfully. The combination of grassroots expertise and diplomatic skill proved more powerful than either could have achieved alone. The children of Valdoria, watching their royal family's transformation, learned valuable lessons about cooperation, service, and the resolution of conflicts through shared purpose. The example set by Princess Catherine and Queen Consort Camilla would influence a new generation of leaders who understood that different approaches could strengthen, rather than threaten, effective collaboration. As the year drew to a close, the Kingdom of Valdoria looked toward the future with confidence and optimism. The royal family had demonstrated that personal growth and professional evolution were possible even under intense public scrutiny. Their story had become one of redemption and collaboration rather than conflict and competition. The awards and recognition that continued to flow toward both women were no longer sources of tension, but shared celebrations of their combined achievements. They had learned that humanitarian work was large enough to accommodate different approaches, and that success was measured not in individual recognition, but in lives improved and communities strengthened. The final chapter of this royal drama had become a testament to the power of shared purpose to overcome personal ambitions and transform competitive relationships into collaborative partnerships that served something greater than themselves.